introduce myself and give you a little bit of background about me. My name is Lawrence Romine, and I'm the Vice President here at Evolution Nutrition. But my background is actually that in the engineering field. Spent a couple years as an electrical design engineer, specifically in the audio industry, and then primarily in business for the past 16 years, sort of 50-50 between software and the semiconductor business. Now obviously you're probably asking yourself how that relates to the fitness industry, and it does when you consider what it is Evolution Nutrition does, which I'll get to in just a moment. I do want to give you just a sense of what we're doing here. This is actually a series, a webcast series, of which this is the second webcast. First one got very, very good response, and that one specifically was having to deal with cross-selling and upselling. So in other words, packaging additional products with the services that you already sell. This second one is now using technology, in our case obviously Evolution Nutrition, our web application, which I'll talk about briefly, in how to establish credibility with your customer base. And obviously the idea there is credibility sells more. So more sessions, in our case more sessions and more meal planning, more supplements, more memberships, whatever it is you're looking to sell more of as it relates to your specific fitness business. Now, just give you a little background, we do use all of these techniques that we are sharing in these webcasts in how we go to market, and I'll share that with you in just a second. The idea here is not necessarily to promote our product and service, although we do a little bit of that, but really trying to make it as neutral as possible and really kind of give you some skills, or at least some insights on how you might be able to augment your current selling approach to sell more sessions, supplements, memberships, etc., as we discussed. So right out of the gate, just kind of give you a sense of what it is we do. And we are a web application, subscription web application, which effectively means software that runs on the internet. So anywhere that you have an internet connected device, you'd be able to access our product. Now, this is how we go to market, and some of these techniques, I should say all of these techniques that are in our sort of proposition are what we're teaching the market. So if you just look at the US opportunity or total available market as it relates to personal training, and this is North America, by no means a small business. You can see the total available market, or TAM, for personal training. It's about $8 billion US. So certainly not a small industry by any stretch. Then of course, sort of hand in glove with personal training obviously goes gym membership total available market, about $27 billion. So obviously a very large market that we're all in, and lots of dollars trading hands. However, if you consider the diet market in its whole, so this is diet products, diet books, diet sodas, everything, all in is about $60 billion US last year. And that is of course growing every year at probably the same rate that the obesity rate in North America is growing. The point here is to say, look, there is a tremendous opportunity that today most of our clients, until they get engaged with Evolution Nutrition, really are not extracting. In other words, they're not having access because of scope of practice limitations to this dieting TAM, or total available market. Just give you some more color here. Diet related products, $40 billion. All in, it's about $60 billion. Huge industry. Now let's talk about this as it relates to personal training. Now, this information came from ACE, which is analogous to CanFit Pro, ISSN, AFPA, etc. If you look at what ACE has published, and this is from 2012, so fairly recent, as to an average income for a personal trainer, thereabouts $52,000 and some change, $52,200, I think, just kind of looking at it loosely. Maybe 52, yeah, 52,200 looks about right. And this is, you know, right in the range of what I hear in talking to our clientele, about 52K. Now, let's talk about what the opportunity would be now using Evolution Nutrition to get into that diet or the meal planning space. And let's just say 15 clients per week, which is about average that I hear in talking to our personal training customers, that they're dealing with about 15 clients in any given week. And let's just say a third of those you were coupling not only your sessions, but you were coupling a meal plan to a third of those clients in any given week, which, by the way, is a very conservative number if you consider the importance of nutrition as it relates to the #1 goal of all your clients, which traditionally weight loss. They can exercise until the cows come home, but unless they're eating properly, they will not meet their goals, and certainly not as rapidly, and we'll talk about that. So easily about a third of your clientele in any given week would qualify for a meal planning purchase, and that very obviously equates to about $300 if you figure you're charging about $60 a meal plan. In 52 weeks of a year, let's say you're making an additional $300 for a $15,600 total, or a raise in your pocket of about 30% working exactly the same hours. Now, we're not going to go through a demonstration of our product today, but certainly if you're interested, by all means, we'd be happy to provide you a link to a demonstration, as well as provide you access to our evaluation software. All right, so let's talk about how you guys go to market. So first and foremost, you need to be concerned with the session quality. In other words, the service that you're providing your clientele. Are they in fact becoming dependent on that expertise? In other words, do they come back again and again and again because of the great experience that they're having? Number two, obviously you need to always be looking to acquire clientele and certainly retain the clientele that you already have. In other words, keep them coming back for more. Now the key to this, the overall key that cuts across all three of these pillars, is first and foremost client success. In other words, are the clients in fact meeting their goals? Now once again, when we talk about the fitness industry, overwhelmingly greater than 95% of your clientele come into you for weight loss. So in fact, are the clients getting into the dress size, meeting their goal as it relates to their wedding date, their reunion date, their event of some magnitude in the future in which they want to achieve a certain weight goal? If you're enabling your clients to achieve those goals, certainly you're going to acquire new clients, you're going to retain those clients because they're having a great experience with you. But let's talk about the sort of mechanisms or tools that you have at your disposal in order to get your clients to achieve those goals. And very clearly what you see here is exercise alone. In other words, just prescribing personal training is in fact the least effective method as it relates to weight loss. Now this was just one particular study from the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, but I've yet to have anybody that looked at this slide and said that they disagreed with what we have to say here. Now if we look at this furthermore, this is the area, because of scope of practice for the most part, that you guys are sort of locked into. And the irony there is, once again, that 95% of your clientele in fact coming to you to lose weight, but you're sort of hamstrung in only being able to discuss exercise with them. Now if you look at this box here, this is the very sort of traditional area where people have short-term results. They have a sort of dramatic weight loss up front, but then of course they put the weight back on and then some once they quit dieting. Okay, now of course diet, which we really prefer to say is nutrition, plus exercise, far and away the most effective method to get people not only to achieve their goals, but to have lasting results with those goals. And that's what we are doing here at Evolution Nutrition, which is providing you the means by which you can now, with no scope of practice concerns, provide both. So you guys are really in the driver's seat to really be, in my view, the very best sort of thought leaders in this industry. And just a little more color here, 19% last year lost weight through exercise alone, 32% 47% that successfully lost weight last year did it through dietary changes and exercise, and that's what we're enabling you guys to do. This change, by the way, just a little bit of color between exercise alone, what you do today, and the combination of nutrition and exercise is about 4.5 times more effective. So it is dramatic. Now, also when we talk about retaining your clients, in other words, keeping them coming back for more, this is a study that talks about monthly attrition rates, or people discontinuing the service on a monthly basis when they're interfacing with fitness personnel versus sales staff at a given club. And this number seems to be very consistent. About 16% of any given club membership will leave in any given month. But what this x-axis here is showing is that with each interaction that the client or member has with a fitness professional, aka you guys, that attrition rate drops when you get to a greater than 4 by a factor of 88%. So in other words, you guys are in fact the strongest salespeople in your clubs, and with each interaction that you can have with a client, they're much more likely to stay. And this is obviously why personal training is important, but when we talk about adding meal planning to the arsenal of things that you guys can deliver to your clientele, you're really kind of interacting with them every day, and we'll talk about that just a little bit. Also talk about this being really an opportunity for you guys to sort of fuel your mainline businesses. So we truly believe and have seen meal planning stand on its own. In other words, it becomes a marketable or sellable item by itself. And of course, all of those potential clients then lead into new memberships and of course new personal training business as well. Just as the membership funnel in your given clubs fuel your personal training business, the personal training business fuels your membership business through both retention and acquisition. But all of your existing members then get fed back into the top of this. So you can see a very closed-looped system, an opportunity for you guys to just simply make more money. And as I said earlier, 30% is really kind of on the conservative side as to what we've seen people be able to do. Alright, now let's talk about the more general stuff on how you can just increase sales in general. And first and foremost, just a little fact here, we talk about the sort of impact that a given salesperson, in your case personal training, can have on a brand decision. And this fact came from obviously the Corporate Executive Board's Sales Executive Council, boy that's a mouthful, saying that 53% of brand decisions are driven by field interactions. In other words, the interaction between the customer and you, the salesperson. And this is more important than the brand, the perceived quality of the brand, the pricing, the marketing, etc. In other words, first and foremost, that experience needs to be very effective. The one-on-one between the salesperson, you, and the potential client, whether you're selling personal training, meal planning, memberships, or the combination of the three. Now, very classically, you hear people talk about sales, and they say sales is about relationships. Another element is this product expertise. In your case, product expertise today really being obviously the physical portion of it, the prescription of exercise, and knowing which muscle groups to target, and knowing the effects of these, and knowing what the sort of rest period needs to be between, or recovery period needs to be, those sorts of things. And that is what we would really consider product knowledge. And this is what we find with sort of new people coming into any sales environment, is they heavily focus on this area here, trying to be very personable and really understanding the specific product that it is they're selling. However, according to Serious Decisions, which is a market research company specifically in sales, when surveyed, potential buyers have actually stated that they value the industry expertise over the relationship and product knowledge by a factor of 4. So in other words, it's 4 times more important to just be a general expert in your business versus the very specific element that it is you're trying to sell. And to take this a little bit further, when we talk about what the buyer's experience traditionally is, it's really inverted as it relates to what most salespeople do. in that 89% of meetings, when surveyed, buyers have said that 89% of their meetings that they have with salespeople actually fail to meet the expectation of industry expertise. And you can see this is 180 degrees out of phase with what most people think is their number one job as a salesperson, being that sort of product expert. Okay? Now, this is really why this is, in my view. Very classically, what we find when you engage with a particular prospect, and again, this can be personal training, membership, or meal planning, or the combination of the three, which is obviously what we bring to the table. And this is the point in which you intersect with the client right here. And this is, let's just say, in time. This x-axis is time. So you engage with your prospect here, and very traditionally, salespeople engage in a why me kind of conversation. In other words, it's what I call the sales selfie. They start to talk about how great their service is, how great their product is, how great they are at that particular service or good. And of course, they're doing relationship building. So it's very much focused around you versus the prospect. Now, the reality is, the reason we do this is because we always sort of assume there's a competitor involved. So it's this very us versus them type of conversation. So of course, human nature would dictate that we almost get kind of defensive and then begin to talk about how great we are. The reality is, however, that 60% of the time, the client chooses nothing at all. In other words, they don't choose us, they don't choose a competitor, they simply continue doing what they're doing today, 60% of the time. So, in other words, your biggest competitor is in fact this status quo. Now, how do you sort of get at the status quo and really make that status quo seem untenable, and certainly not something that the client would want to continue? Well, first and foremost, what you need to do is back up a couple steps and not engage immediately in this why me conversation, but much more of this first and foremost, why should you change? In other words, why is the status quo not a scalable solution for you, or not something that you should continue to do? And then secondarily, why they need to change now as opposed to later. In other words, putting urgency into that sales process. Once you've done that, then you can get into this why me, okay? So what we're getting at here is on this red side, this why change and why now, this is a buying vision. And when surveyed, buyers say that they would choose to give their business 65% of the time to that salesperson or that organization that provided a buying vision, versus only 35% of the people surveyed said they would engage in a bake-off. So in other words, evaluate one solution versus another solution versus the status quo solution. So you really must begin to think about how you build a buying vision for your clientele so that you win not 24% of the time, but much more of this 60% of the time is sucked into those choosing your solution. Alright, so this is where the industry expertise exists, the product knowledge here, which good news is you've already got this. So it's a very slight adjustment to what it is you're doing today to win more business. Alright, so let's talk about winning more business. 80-20 rule. Now this is something that when I do this presentation or this type of presentation live, I always ask people to raise their hand and say, hey, how many of you have heard of the 80-20 rule in sales? Almost without fail, someone raises their hand and says, I know what it means, that 80% of your revenue is coming from 20% of your clientele. And that in fact also is a very traditional and a very true statement. However, this is a little different. Where I'm going with this is to say, if we took 100% of the people in this world or in your market space that could qualify for your services, at any given time, there's only 20% of them that have an active need. Okay? In other words, they've already sort of come to the conclusion that we have a problem and we're going to address that problem using a type of service or product that you in fact provide. We call that an active need. Now obviously that leaves the overwhelming majority of that potential market or those potential customers that are what I say is fat and happy. And literally in our business they're fat and happy. In other words, they haven't yet made up their mind that they have a problem that they need to address with personal training, and in our case, personal training and meal planning. Now, if you look at this statistic, this also very much supports the previous slide when I talked about 60% of clients just simply choosing to do nothing at all because the salesperson, in this case you, failed to expose the latent needs. In other words, they have a need, they just haven't yet been made aware of it. Okay, so I say this many times in sales, you want to be giving solutions to problems the client didn't even know they had. Okay? Alright, in other words, a lot of times people don't know what they want until you show it to them. And this is a quote from Steve Jobs. And this is really kind of what we're getting at. You must be very credible, however. Okay? You have to deliver this bad news, if you will, in a very credible way so that you're believable. Okay, so this is developing yourself as that industry expert in the eyes of your client or potential client. Okay, now what is credibility? Certainly it's not something that you can just pull out of your briefcase, pull out of your desk drawer, stick on your wall. It's instead developed, and we've all had this experience. You know very, very quickly when you engage with somebody whether or not that person is an expert on the topic of which you're discussing or not. And I'm going to give you today 3 simple steps in how you can establish credibility with each and every one of your clients and of course lead to selling more. Okay? Traditionally, credibility made up of 2 parts. Trustworthiness and obviously expertise, as we've discussed before. Okay, so this very traditional why me sort of process. Now, of course, this is more geared towards solution, sort of business to business type selling. But nonetheless, this is a very traditional sales flow. And short of reading through each one of these steps, what you see here is a much more listening-oriented type of process versus what I prescribe, which is a much more provocative type of process. In other words, if you look at this qualification phase, I don't care what you're selling, everybody's been educated to qualify their customers. What you see here is this needs assessment. This first sort of half is very much a listening. In other words, they're asking the client to voice their needs. And as I've already established, that's only going to get you about 20% of the clients because 80% of the market, they have no needs. Okay, so this is where we talk about being that provocative salesperson. So step number 1 that I would prescribe, and once again, this just supports my 80-20 rule. Number 1, argue against yourself. In other words, don't qualify customers, disqualify customers. And this is for a number of reasons. So in other words, taking that very sort of qualification process, which in my view is sort of viewing life through rose-tinted glasses, you need to expose potential problems with the client. And once again, not only the problems they may be aware of, but problems that they don't necessarily know exist. Define the consequence of that particular problem. And then of course this leads to more selling. Like for example, let the customer know that if they engage with you, that exercise alone is actually the least effective method by which to lose weight. Now, this is where I say sell against yourself because you're really sort of, if you're using meal planning like a service we provide, you can offer all 3. But very clearly in the eyes of the client, it's very obvious which of your services is in fact the most effective and going to get them not only the best result, but the quickest result and the most long-lasting result. Okay? So here is, in a sort of disqualification mode, how you really should have a conversation. So first and foremost, you need to have some sort of grabber, something that gets their attention, something that gets them to pay attention to what it is you're saying or showing them, and very quickly articulate for them a potential pain, the impact of pain, that particular pain. Begin now to show a bit of contrast, sort of the before and after, a glimpse of how you potentially would solve that problem for them, and then a little bit of proof. Now this can be actually showing them some exercise, showing them some examples of befores and afters and that sort of thing. But the point here is you need to reset this as many times as you can in a given conversation. So grabber, pain, impact, contrast, glimpse of value, proof. And this can be over and over and over and over again. And like I say to many people, how many reasons do you want a client to have to buy something from you? And the answer is as many as absolutely possible. So the more pain that you can uncover, the more impact of that pain and a glimpse of how you might affect it, the more likelihood that you're going to have success in selling the client something, and more importantly, selling them more than one thing. All right, so bullet point number 1 in how to develop credibility is disqualify. Get them to tell you no as quickly as possible, because it builds trust, and it shows that your interest is really not just about yourself, but it's really more about them. Obviously, it respects their time, because I've said this many times. As a salesperson, I don't want to sell somebody something they don't need, want, nor desire. And it's my job to develop that need, want, and desire. Okay? Not only this, but it also very quickly enhances your perception of being an expert, not just as it relates to exercise, but as it relates to the entire industry. Okay, so bullet point number 1, begin to disqualify your customers versus qualifying your customers. Number 2, precision. We talk about this flow of conversation. Where precision comes into play is in this area here. People simply believe precise numbers. So in this impact section and in this pain and contrast section, use precise numbers. And now I'm going to show you an example that was done from a gentleman named Dan Schley at the Ohio State University. It was given to about 55 of his undergraduate students, and you can see the breakdown there, their age ranges and the mix of men to women. But they were given this, 2 groups. The first group was given this statistic: 60% of American households recycle. The second group was given this statistic: 60.37% of American households recycle. And they were simply asked on a scale of 1 to 6, how likely are you to believe that that is in fact a true statistic? And what you see is a pretty different response. So the average or mean on group 1 that was given the round number were moderately unlikely to believe the statistic, versus the group on the right that was given the very precise number were actually moderately likely to believe the statistic. Furthermore, they asked the people, why is that? And to the tune of 78% said, simple, it infers more accuracy. And you would have noticed this as we've gone through at least the beginning part of our presentation. It's one thing to say it's about 4 times more effective to combine exercise with nutrition, versus it's actually 4.49, I rounded it to 4.5, times more successful to combine nutrition and exercise as it relates to weight loss. So be very precise. Now take this a little bit further. They were then asked, who said it? In other words, once they answered how likely they were to believe the statistic, they were presented with 2 pictures. One gentleman wearing a very professional suit, in this case I've used Barney, versus a less professional looking individual. Again, for hyperbole, I've used a Joe Dirt looking character. But they said, look, who said this statistic? Well, in the round number, 65% said, yeah, it was the guy with the suit. The guy wearing the suit said that statistic. Versus in the group that was given the very precise number, 90% of the time attributed that statistic to the gentleman wearing the suit. So once again, this just sort of adding to your perceived expertise. Okay, so once again, great example of how we go to market. The difference between exercise alone versus nutrition combined with exercise is 4.4 times more likely to be successful than it is with just exercise alone. So what's the point? Number 2, be very precise. Couple things here. Obviously, numbers easily contrastable. It's very easy to show somebody that weight loss versus, exercise versus exercise plus nutrition. Very, very easy to contrast that. Be very precise when you do these sorts of things, because it adds perception to your adds expertise, and of course adds to your credibility. All right, finally, provide proof. Okay, this is very simple. Obviously, use statistics, third-party statistics, but use personal stories. I do this quite a bit in sales. I always like to relate something back to something I've done personally. Now, I highly recommend, if you haven't done so already, begin to develop a catalog of personal success stories that you've had with clients, and even engage them in providing that testimonial for you. These are very, very powerful, and once again, easily contrastable to show a potential client, look, these are the results I've had in the past with this client. It's very easy to say, look, they lost 100 pounds, they reduced their body fat percentage by X% using my services. Now, as if in fact you're using Evolution Nutrition and you're now providing meal planning, you can take that a step further and now begin to show before and after results with exercise alone, and now before and after results with exercise plus nutrition, and begin to develop contrast there. Now obviously what you're trying to do is show the client once again the most effective solution to their problem that you've articulated for them, and of course then selling them more of your services. And finally, if you have any professional or media given accolades, so this is, were you the trainer of the quarter? Have you been recognized by CanFit? Have you been recognized by ACE? Have you been published in any magazines or blogs or anything of that nature? Hugely powerful to make sure people are aware of that you're not just stating that you're credible, but others have recognized your credibility. All right, so these are the 3 simple steps, at least as I prescribe them. Number 1, disqualify versus qualify. Number 2, use precise statistics. Back it up. Be very, very precise. Provide proof. And finally, just sell more sessions, make more money. That is the presentation for today. Certainly, if anybody has any questions, I think Nick's been answering some questions along the way. Be more than happy to facilitate anybody getting an evaluation copy or just wants to inquire with more information. We'll be sending an email to everybody offering that. So if you want an eval, just click on the button and we'll give you access to the application. Also, begin to check back with our website. We'll be publishing this entire series of sales training, and I think that's about it.